do you really get from the classroom to the boardroom? And a lot of the things I'll talk about, I won't say are rocket science, but putting your desire into practice, I think is the more difficult. And that's where those of you will differentiate from the ones who succeed from the ones who, you know, may not quite get to exactly where you want to go. But I thought before I get into, you know, that part of my pitch, you know, Joy talked about what I do at Xerox, but what the heck does all that mean, you know? And so I'll spend maybe just 5 minutes sharing a little bit about Xerox and a little bit about my role, which will help you, you know, kind of understand, you know, so what does a president of, you know, I run $2.2 billion of the Xerox's $10 billion business, and what does that mean? And when I talk about how I got here, I think that might give you some insight and put it in perspective. So basically, you know, I'm responsible for thousands of clients. I'm responsible for hundreds of employees and billions of dollars of business to make sure that everything that the company's brand stands for is really realized in the marketplace. And so, you know, that still is pretty high level. So what do you do every day? I don't know that I'll get into that, but let me tell you a little bit about Xerox. So when you say I serve their customers, I make sure our employees serve our customers. I make sure that the customers are paying their bills and it's delivering revenue and profit for our shareholders. That's pretty high level. What does that mean? So here's 2 quick videos that I'm going to share with you that kind of takes the old traditional Xerox, you know, what our brand is so known for, copiers, multifunction devices, and how we've really built on that brand over the last 50 years to what we become today. So let's play the video clip.
Since people started recording information, there's been a need to duplicate it. Very nice work, Brother Dominic. Thank you. Very nice. Now, I would like 500 more sets. Brother Dominic, how are you? You do a good job for me. The Xerox 9200 duplicating system, unlike anything we've ever made, feeds and cycles originals. It has a computerized program that controls the entire system, can duplicate, reduce, and assemble a virtually limitless number of complete sets, and does it all at an incredible 2 pages per second. Here are your sets, Father. 500 sets you asked for. It's a miracle.
So some of
people started recording information.
Some of the professors may recognize that commercial that was played at the Super Bowl like 35 years ago, or in the 70s. And it really talked about our products. It was very technical, you know, so many pages per minute and all that. But how have we built on that great brand, and what are we doing today? Because people aren't printing as much. I mean, let's really understand the whole digital world is rapidly approaching us. And how do we exploit that brand of the past while we explore the digital brand of the future? So I'm going to share with you a commercial we launched earlier this year, which is the next one right here. Let's play that. It'll give you a perspective of how the company has changed over the last 40 years.
Brother Dominic, sir. Nice work, Brother Dominic. Very nice.
Thank you.
Now we just need 500 more, translated into 35 languages, personalized for every brother and sister, and shared across the 7 continents. Now, where were we?
Che bonito! Questo è lindo!
Ciao Dominic, ma dove sono? Io parlo da Dominic questo.
Ah, magnificent.
Brother.
Brother Dominic again.
Look, Albert, I got it.
It's a miracle.
So for those of you in marketing, it's a cute play on leveraging the brand of the past and almost kind of transitioning to our brand of the future. And if you saw in that video, as I clearly did because I do this every day, you saw Brother Dominic, the new Brother Dominic, walk up with a badge and authenticate. So it's very personalized. You know, security is a big issue. So these devices are all on network. So for the IT people out there, you know, making sure there's no device intrusion or any worms or anything that are going to get into the network and destroy it. It scans it, it images it, it prints in color, right? It prints in multiple languages. It will translate a document in 30 seconds in one of over 50 languages automatically. So we start to think about the world of 40 years ago where we just went up and made a copy. Now today we're scanning into repositories, we're translating, we're communicating all over the world, we're pulling from Dropbox and printing on our printer. All these things are changing. So what I do every day is what you saw in the second commercial there, is really help customers like Goldman Sachs, Procter & Gamble, who have these devices in 160 countries around the world. And they're saying, how do I get my employees to be more productive? How do I get this paper document that's an invoice into an automated billing system so I don't have to actually have somebody walk it over, have somebody write a check, put it in the mail and pay it. And so all that automation is new. And so that is really the new Xerox, and that's what's driving our growth in the future. So we're still very, very vibrant here in the Monroe County community, as the Dean had mentioned, and this is what I work with thousands of clients every day to do. So that kind of gives you a little perspective about the company and my role. But let's get down to the brass tacks. You know, how do you really get that success that you're all thriving for? Most of you in here are seniors. So getting from the classroom to the corner office, or getting from the classroom to your next job, you know, how do you get those promotions? And I'm going to kind of frame that in three ways here. The first one is, how much is success is driven by hard work, and how much is luck? You know, some people, they're lucky, you know, they got that job, or they're lucky, their boss likes them. And so I'm going to talk to that, and I'm going to share some real life examples to put that in perspective. Second thing I'm going to frame around is what do successful people do? What do I see successful people do to stay on top of their game every day? You know, some people you're like, man, how the heck did they know that? Or what did I miss, you know? And the third one is, you know, failing, taking risks, being courageous. How do I balance that? I have $2.2 billion with a $10 billion company. So when I make decisions, am I going to, you know, tank the business? And how much do I balance that risk reward and that courage? And how have I done that? And how do other successful people do that throughout their daily lives and their career? And I think if you think about those three things, now there's probably 5 more that somebody else at the next Dean lecture series will talk to. Take them all in, because they're all very valid. These are just 3 I picked today to talk to you about, right? So let's talk about the first one, luck. Thanks, are you doing the slides for me? Pretty good. So the first one, you know, talk about luck. It's one of the hard work, really. It's one of the first things I look for when I interview a candidate. You know, I got 35, 45 minutes, maybe sometimes 30 minutes to make a decision on a hire, especially if I'm not hiring somebody from inside the organization and I'm hiring them from the outside. Other than references and a resume, and this is really valid to where many of you are in your time of life right now, looking for jobs. I ask, tell me about your first job. And a lot of times they'll say, well, I'm a senior in college, you know, I'm interviewing for my first job. If I'm bringing in, you know, candidates, entry-level candidates. And I'll say, no. Your first job. Did you shine shoes when you were young for your neighbor or for your dad? Did you babysit? Did you just babysit when somebody calls you up? Did you go out as a Girl Scout and sell cookies, or as a Boy Scout, or for your football team, or help raise money for the school? I really want to hear about your first job. And I want to hear about your second job. And I want to hear about your third job. And now you're a senior in college, and maybe you're now telling me about your 4th or 5th job. Now I'm listening. That's very different. You should think about that when you're talking and preparing for the job interview. I'll tell you a story. My son, by the way, I love talking to you guys. I have a 17-year-old and a 22-year-old. And so much of what I'm going to share with you today, I share with them all the time. You know, and it's really interesting. So my son, 4 or 5 years ago, is working at Wegmans, and you know, he's, I don't know, 10, 20 hours a week. But Wegmans has an internship program that when you become a freshman in college, it's a 3-year program. We all know Wegmans. It's a fabulous company to work for. So besides just bagging groceries and working at the local store, you know, to get an internship in store operations is pretty cool. There's a couple hundred candidates, and they hire 10. So my son's preparing. Like most 16-year-old would prepare. What should I wear tomorrow, Dad? You know, I go, well, have you done any research on what store operations is? No. Have you gone, you know, today there's so much information available on the internet. So I helped him and sat down with them and did a, you know, 30 minutes. I'm not talking 5 hours of research about the job. His store manager happened to be one of the first ones to go through the internship. So, boy, you ought to talk to your store manager. Call her up and ask her if you'd like to learn more about it before you have your interview. He did that. His friend at school had a father who worked at Wegmans and was an assistant manager. Why don't you meet with the assistant manager and ask him or her what happens? Now, lo and behold, maybe spent 2 hours preparing for the interview. But do you think he was any different than the rest of the 200 who applied? Absolutely he was. And lo and behold, surprising to him, he got the job. And so, you know, you say, was he lucky? He's lucky. His father works for Xerox and has, you know, years of experience and coached him and all that. No, he put in a little bit of sweat equity to get the job. I have a video that I'm going to show you, another one, that is, you know, it's not my son. It's Will Smith. So this is a YouTube video. The quality isn't that great, but this is exactly what I'm talking about. So let's run the video.
So the only thing that I see that is distinctly different about me is I'm not afraid to die on a treadmill. Right? I will run.
You would not be outworked.
I will not be outworked.
Right.
Period.
Yeah.
You know, you might have more talent than me. You might be smarter than me. You might be sexier than me. You might be all of those things. You got it on me in 9 categories. But if we get on the treadmill together, right, there's 2 things. You're getting off first, or I'm going to die. It's really that simple.
You know, it's kind of crazy when he starts off and he goes, I will die before I get up. And you're going, where is this going? But I was actually, there's a really great professor at UPenn. Her name is Angela Duckworth. And she coined this term grit. And so I've had her speak to my organization a couple of times. And she actually is the one who showed this video. I'll give her all the credit. I love gritty people. I mean, you heard Will Smith, who obviously has been extremely successful in his field of acting. And he says, right, you might have more talent than me. You don't have to be the best at it. You might be smarter than me. You don't have to be the smartest. I'm not. You may be all of those things, but I will not be outworked. And that will mask many of the gaps that you have in any of those other areas. So I love that. I will not be outworked. And so when you add that work effort with some decent acting talent, you know, he's not bad, but he works at it. You get to be one of the best in your class. And so that is kind of my tagline there, which is, is sitting up there. I'll talk to it when I finish here. But this whole notion of grit and gritty people is gritty people constantly challenge themselves to be better. Always. Get a 95 on a test, I could have got a 98. Gritty people, I asked Angela Duckworth, I said, hey, I'm interviewing people all the time. How do I find a gritty person? And she said to me, gritty people start to become gritty early in life. So it lines up very well with the first question I ask people when I'm interviewing is, tell me about your first job. So she says, you start to look, gritty is a learned behavior. Now the good news for all of you, you're about to start a whole new chapter of your life. So you absolutely can recreate yourself. If you haven't been gritty, or maybe you weren't a babysitter, or didn't deliver papers as a kid, or whatever, you're going into a whole new, you're going to get a job, you're going to go off on your own, you can move to a new city, you can recreate yourself, and you can become gritty. So think about some of these examples that I share. Work it is absolutely a critical ingredient for success. It doesn't come easy, especially in today's environment. I had John Thompson Sr., any Georgetown basketball fans in here? I know you guys all love, Brockport, but no, I didn't think so. So John Thompson Sr. was the coach back in the 80s and brought him to the Final Four a couple times. Just a great basketball coach. And John Thompson Sr. spoke to a group of my salespeople, back then, and he said when he interviewed for the job, he sat in the office of the president with the athletic director of Georgetown University. They said, how much money do you want? What do you want? He goes, pay me whatever you think I'm worth, because someday I'm going to come back to you and say, you need to pay me what I'm worth. And he said, I asked for one thing, lights in the gym. Back in the 80s, Georgetown did not have lights in the gym, and they looked at him and said, why do you want lights in the gym? He goes, we are going to work so hard as a college basketball team. We will be in the Final Four. The NCAAs will want to come and televise our games, and if we don't have lights in the gym, you can't televise the game. All I want is lights in the gym. And his message was, you got to put some sweat equity to get rewarded. And don't expect any handouts until you work hard for it. And I thought that was, such an inspirational message. And I always think about that. Boy, he just give me lights and pay me what you think I'm worth. Because by the way, when I win that national championship, I'm going to come strutting in your office and I'm going to tell you need to pay me what I'm worth. But I'm going to earn it first. So this is this whole notion, this first question that I asked. How much of success is hard work and how much is luck? And I say they're carpool partners. They ride together. In other words, you create your own luck. And this is a quote that I heard from Raleigh Massimino, Villanova coach. And he said, the harder I work, the luckier I get. And it's so true. And so, by the way, the beauty I love about this saying is when you are successful, and people might be a little bit jealous, and they go, oh, you're so lucky. And you go, yeah, you know what? The harder I work, the luckier I get. And then you can own it. So that's the first thing. Now, if you remember, the second one I mentioned was really around you can work really hard. But if you ain't got no talent, you're going to struggle. So how do you stay on top of your game? And I got a couple ideas here for you. Think of world-class musicians, famous artists, whoever. And I want to continue on this theme of gritty people. Gritty people are constantly trying to better themselves. They typically spend 30 minutes a day practicing something. So in your case, you might be studying for a test. You might be practicing you know, whatever sport you're playing. But the difference about gritty people is not just practice. It's practicing what you're not good at. We call it deliberate practice. So if you're going to study, study what you don't know. Don't pull out the stuff you know and say, I'm really good at this. Pull out the stuff you don't know. You know, I use the example of my kids took piano lessons when they were young. Any of you guys, musicians, taking lessons when you were younger, maybe still? That first page of the music, you play great, right? You get to that second page, not so much. Or that one bar that's just not that, you're just not that good at. And so, you know, I always joke, I'd say to my kids, I go, will you start with the second page and not the first page? Because you got that first page, you ace it. The beginning of the song sounds outstanding. You get to that one spot. So the key is this whole notion of deliberate practice. Practice what you're not good at. That's how you become great. So in the example of the piano or the musician, if you always practice from the beginning, you're going to be pretty good. Because you're going to start off okay. You're going to make a few mistakes in the middle and maybe you practice the ending. But you're not going to be great. So practice, deliberate practice. A couple examples. You know, last night I was sharing with a couple people before the talk here. You know, what's a typical day? What'd you do? What would you be doing today if you weren't here? What'd you do yesterday? I said, last night I was on the phone. I had a meeting from 7 o'clock till midnight with Citibank, large financial services institute who spends millions of dollars a year with us. And their technical team happens to reside in Singapore. So I had one of my technical people and one of my salespeople fly out to Singapore and host this meeting. And then through phone, we had all our subject matter experts on to answer these technical questions. You know, how are you managing malware? How are you making sure that you don't have any intrusions in the network? What's your SSI? You know, all the technical terms. Now, I'm somewhat technical, but I'm not real technical. I did not need to be on the call last night from 7 to midnight. I really didn't. I had no value add. I don't think I said a word other than hello. Thank you for being a great client of ours. We have a really good team here to walk through the agenda. That was it. But I was on the call because I wanted to hear what the customer questions were around the technical piece. And I wanted to hear the answers our technical people gave. Because someday, I may not have them with me, and I may get asked the same question. And it's crazy to think, you know, you talk about this notion of gritty and deliberate practice. That's an example. I consider myself a constant learner. I love learning. And so the way to become great, or one way to get from the classroom to whatever level you aspire to be, you are going to have to practice. You're going to have to practice a lot. And I recommend, and what I find is practice what you're not good at. Deliberate practice. So that's really the answer to the second question, or that second framework. All about personal growth. Focus on your personal growth. Focus on deliberate practice. You'll get to wherever you want to go if you practice those things you're not good at. Of course, I didn't use my clicker. I usually don't use slides, but this is a great example. You know, these are some people who have done very, very well. They didn't get there without practicing what they were good at. So deliberate practice. That's the second piece. So you work hard, you practice what you're not good at, and then you talk about, okay, now I want to really push myself. Really, how much risk do I take? And what about failure? And how do I deal with success and failure and risk-taking? And successful people have to have the courage to take risks. In any example you use. I have this one of Bonnie St. John. So Bonnie St. John was the first African-American woman to win a bronze medal in downhill skiing, and she has one leg.
Even though my mind wanted to just...
And as you see in the pictures here, she has one leg. I think she summarizes what I love about courage and risk-taking, and really helps answer the question that you should ask, how much risk should I take? How much courage do I need? and how is that going to help me attain my goals? So let's play the video here real quick.
All away and not be embarrassed. I grabbed my equipment, I got over the finish line, and when the dust cleared, I was still in third place. I won the bronze medal that I have on, the U.S. flag waving behind me, they put the medal on, my mother sobbing in the snow, but it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't gotten up and finished, even when I didn't feel like it, even when I didn't think that I was doing well. I thought about this later. You ever do coulda, woulda, shoulda? Right? So, the woman who won, the woman who won in that race and got the medal, she also fell. But in the first run, when nothing went wrong, I was the fastest skier. So I was the best slalom skier. How did she win that race? She was the better getter-upper. Even though my mind wanted to just crawl away and not be embarrassed, I grabbed.
So, I usually don't play the video. I like telling the story better than she does, but I like what she says. She's the better getter-upper. You will, so here's the story, because it wasn't all in the clip. 2 heats to the downhill ski race. First heat, she zooms right down, she's in first place. Her closest competitor fell and was in third place. The second heat, she hits that patch of ice. And when she tells it, she's like, I'm coming down, I see the finish line right in front of me, I know I have a good run, I can feel the gold medal. I can feel it around my neck, I can envision myself standing on the podium with the national anthem playing, my mother crying, and everything. And she says, I hit that ice and I fall. And the split second I fall, she says, I think, darn it. I can't believe I fell. But in all of her training, as she said, you're trained to get up and go. And she gets up and goes, and she successfully, a lot of people would like to have an Olympic bronze medal. And she says the difference between winning the gold medal and not, the difference between being first and not being first, is who gets up faster. You guys will run across a ton of failures in your life. Do not think of them as failures. You get a bad grade on a test, some people take the grade and they say, by the way, talk about my son. That teacher didn't even cover that chapter in the class. And it was, 4 of the questions, right? So some people will take that position. Some people, my daughter, will go back to the teacher, the professor, and say, hey, for whatever reason, I didn't do as well on that test. Is there some extra credit or something I can do to make it up and get my grade up? So, it's not who falls, it's who gets up quicker. There's so many stories that I have, they're business stories. I don't want to bore you with business stories, but I used my son at Wegmans in the first frame of the discussion. I'll use him again in this one. He's in his 3rd year of internship at Wegmans. He goes, they move him to Boston, they pay for his room and board. I mean, he's a 20-year-old kid, he's in Boston, they're paying for his room and board, and he's got a summer internship. He's feeling good. Comes home the first day from work. Dad, they got me shining tomatoes. I've been working for Wegmans for 5 years. I've managed customer service at Pittsford, I was in Fairport, I managed the Helping Hands kids and people, they're blah, 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 blah. I said, at first I wanted to smack him upside the head and say, you're an intern, you're gonna shine tomatoes, But I really listened to him and he said to me, and this is this whole notion about getting up fast. He said to me, I could be spending my summer doing something towards what I really love, which is business intelligence, data analytics, big data. That's really what he has moved towards, and that's where he's working now. And he says, I could have spent my whole summer doing that, and now I'm sitting here shining tomatoes. And I said to him, that's when I realized, a lesson I shared with him, I will share with you. Do not be a victim. If you don't like it, change it. You took the job, you moved, of course. I moved all my stuff to Boston, it's June, there's no more internships left. You all the right answers. And I said, that's what 90% of people will say. And that 10% that you want to be, that you aspire to be, that 10% will say, I'm not going to shine tomatoes. Even though I'm getting paid, I'm in Boston, it's a great town, I can have a lot of fun, I don't have to worry about, it's not like it's going to be hard to get up and, fix the vegetable stand in the morning. So I can hang out and have fun at night and things like that. Instead, I said, get your butt on the computer tonight, Google internships, find out who you know, friends and family, send some emails out. Today's world is all digital. You guys can all do this. And to his credit, he did that. So this is a conversation about desire and will and lining that up with execution. Because it's very easy to say, for all the right reasons, not going to happen. And busted it for about a week and got a couple interviews and got a job in big data analytics, for a company in Philadelphia, and went to work for him and graduated and has his full-time job in a field that he loves. And that's where you say, boy, you can fall down, and woe is me, and all these things, but get up fast. You're going to run into so many different things. Gosh, my first interviews, my first job out of college was with Caterpillar Tractor Company. I was in their marketing training program. It was in 1982. Caterpillar announced their earnings 3 months after I was hired, and they lost $54 million back in 1982. They brought in my training class and the 4 training classes before us and laid us all off. Here I'm right out of college. I got this great job. I moved to Peoria, Illinois. Thank goodness they let me go. Otherwise I might still be there. And, a failure. Not a failure, a bump, a speed bump. How do you get around that? My first interview for sales management job, I had to go through it 3 times before the company approved me ready to be a sales manager. I was young, I was aggressive, I probably applied a little bit early, but I didn't take the first time to say, I'm never going to be a manager at this company, I'm going to quit and go work for another company. I really took the feedback and said, what is it that I need to learn? And how do I get better? And so, so many different, my first sales call, boy, my first sales call, now imagine this, I get all done with sales training at Xerox, it's 1983 now, I'm excited, and I walked into a doctor's office. What was I thinking, right? Picture a doctor's office. So I walked up and knocked on that glass window, or whatever, she opens it up, and I say, I was taught you should ask to see the decision maker. So I said, is the doctor available? Well, by the way, there's about 8 people in the waiting room, all listening, because it's as quiet as you can hear a pin drop in a doctor's office. So they're all listening to my pitch. It's the first pitch I ever gave out of training. It was a little rough around the edges. You can't see the doctor, he's seeing patients. Do you have an appointment? I'm like, well, no, I don't have an appointment, I'm not sick. I just want to sell you a copier. Needless to say, I got shot down big time. I walked out of that office, 8 people looked at me like I was an idiot, and I felt about this big, and it's another lesson learned. It's another speed bump. So please, as you're really thinking about your careers, do not take failures or when you fall down as failures. Take them as opportunities to learn. Be courageous. Take risks. It will make you better. Hey, there's a song, isn't there? What's the name of the song? I wrote it down here. I know it. I'm just talking too much. Anyways, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? There you go. My father drove into me. Show me someone who never failed, and I'll show you someone who never succeeded. So take the risks. It's going to make you better. So those really, those are kind of my three kind of points, and it's so you could call it resilience. Be resilient. Take it as a strength. Being courageous, taking risks, falling down, and getting back up is a trait that I would love to have throughout my entire organization. Those are the people who are going to be successful. So be resilient. So this is kind of how I sum it up. I say, look, you know, I started off at the beginning, I said, these are 3 things that I'm going to share with you. I'm sure if I had another half hour, there's another 10 that I could share about leadership, about, you know, valuing people, dignity and respect, you know. All of those things are so important as an individual in a, you know, in any business or any career, whatever it is. But these are the 3 that I kind of wanted to highlight today. The harder I work, the luckier I get. Practice what you're not good at. That's what's going to make you from good to great. And be resilient. Take risks and learn from your mistakes. They're only going to make you better. You know, that's really, I think we have a little time for questions, but those are really my comments to you guys. I wish you all the best of luck as you know, really decide what you want to do and go out into the business world. With that, I'm going to have Joy turn it over to the group. And hey, I'll take any questions from you guys.
Questions?
Everybody else want to? I'll repeat. Yeah, you should use a mic so everybody can hear your question.
First of all, I want to thank you for the talk. It was some great insight into looking for jobs and actually getting one. What do you do on your free time? If you have any.
Yeah. I love to golf. Unfortunately, that's a 5-hour round, so, you know, I don't get that. I maybe get 16 or 20 rounds of golf in. I love to travel. So my wife and I now, when I travel, my wife's been coming with me on a couple of trips. You know, I do stuff around my family. This weekend, so free time. I boogied out of work Friday at 3 o'clock, had a couple calls. We drove to Cleveland. My daughter, I said, was 17. So, you know, 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock, I'm on the phone. We're in the car. We get to Cleveland. We do a campus tour in Cleveland. Come home Sunday, work around the house, you know, have fun, worked out. I'll play tennis, play golf. Talk to my brother who lives in another city, you know, just kind of the typical stuff. But I would say my free time, I like spending it with my family. I have a conversation, you know, in other forums that I've talked about. People say, how do you balance work and family? And I say, I don't balance work and family. I would be schizophrenic if I tried to spend, okay, now I'm in my work mode, and then I run over here, and now I'm in my family mode. And I go, I bring my family to work, obviously. I talked about my family today. And I bring work home to my family. My kids know, you know, they know BJ Davis, who's here with me, you know, who works with me. They know my boss's name. They do. And so I don't really try to say I balance work and family. It's all me. I'm work, I'm family, they go together. I'm on the call last night, kids are running around, you know, wife. So I run my life, you know, as I want to run it, and I integrate them. So, and I think that's a good practice, you know. So yeah, I can't try and separate the two. It would be just too hard.
Thank you so much for sharing your time and experience with us. I just wanted to ask about the driving forces behind the Xerox split, and now that it's been successful in January of this year, do you feel like it's been as successful as you expected?
The Xerox, I'm sorry.
The Xerox split.
Oh, the split. I think the split has been great for the company. You know, what's happened, so Xerox about in 2008, 2010-ish, probably 7 years ago, yeah, 2010, we acquired a company called ACS. Thank you, BJ. Geez, 7 years, my memory's getting bad. So we acquired ACS, $6.5 billion acquisition. It was business process outsourcing. we thought that we would integrate that in with our services business and it would be good growth for the company. And I think you say, know when to hold them, know when to fold them. 6 years went by. We really didn't have the synergies that we thought in our client base, where we thought business process outsourcing and document management could come together. And I'm speaking a little business speak here, but since you asked the question, we recognized that we weren't getting revenue benefits or synergies. Same customers who were buying the stuff we acquired had nothing to do with the customers who were buying the traditional Xerox stuff that we sell that you saw in the commercial. So there was no synergy. And what was happening is the cash we were generating was being over-exaggerated and infused into the business we bought because we bought it to grow. And to some extent, it was diluting the efforts on the traditional business that was generating all the cash. So by splitting the company, now the Xerox Services, that company is now called Conduent. It's its own Fortune 500 company with its own board of directors. They have nothing to do with the Xerox. We split totally. They have to find their R&D money and generate it from their own cash. And all that cash that we were infusing from the traditional business into that business is now back in our ability to invest in our R&D and some of the things I showed you on the video. So this year we launched the largest product launch in the history of the 110 years that Xerox has been around. And so we're taking that cash and investing it in what's going to make us strong in the traditional Xerox business, and how we're merging that physical paper world into the digital world, and using all those devices, printers and copiers, to be the on-ramp and the off-ramp to the digital repository world. So it's going very well. I'm really happy that we did it, and I'm very encouraged by what we're seeing with it. So thanks for asking. Maybe a little too technical for the broader group, but going good. Yes.
Hi, good morning. Afternoon now. I am Dr. Cephas Archie. I am our college's Chief Diversity Officer, and I would first off like to say congratulations on receiving the Diversity Leadership Award. I think that we all can appreciate the value of what that means to your organization as well as to the people who are supporters of your organization. So, congratulations. Second thing I wanted to highlight is how in your two different videos, you highlighted the first one. I think you said it was you did it about 30-something years ago. How at that time your end users were, and I love the monk analogy, were of one category group. But then when you looked at the more modern video you just did, one of the major differences that I saw is that your demographic changed. So as technology increased, as the accessibility increased, you had to then change how you delivered your services to the new and diverse populations of groups of users that utilize them. And so what that did is it highlighted the concept of globalization and global marketing and the pertinence of diversity amongst that group. You talked about the different languages, the different cultures, the different age groups, etc. So specifically looking at that, when you talked about courage, you talked about some great concepts, grit, hard work, risk-taking.
Deliberate practice.
Bingo. So one of the things that I wanted to highlight within one of the things that we do charge each of our students to be cognizant of is the concepts of diversity. So having all the attributes that you described coming from certain select groups as working hard, sometimes minority or diverse groups have to even work harder just to get these same opportunities. And so one of the things that I would like, and that doesn't just mean underrepresented groups, that means women. Women have to work twice as hard as men in certain areas. That means people of different languages. That means people of different faiths and religions. Right. So a large part of that is what I'd like to ask your feedback on is, even if you do work as hard, but if you work even harder, sometimes you have to be relentless. So not only just resilient, but sometimes some of us have to be relentless in our pursuit to actually obtain that same success that others may have. Talk about the concept of relentlessness when it comes to all of the areas of the groups that we're talking about.
So, I love relentless. Do not let anything get in your way of being successful. It's kind of the example I used with with my son at Wegmans after 2 years of internship, that third year. Don't be a victim. Now that's a strong word in relationship to my son. It's not necessarily the same as what you were mentioning with diversity and inclusion and things like that. But I think if you have a roadblock or a speed bump, you need to be relentless and figure out how to get over it, around it, or through it. But you can't let it stop you. And so hopefully, in the case of diversity and inclusion, you find a company that has a culture that will enable you and support you if you happen to be a minority, a female, a gay or lesbian, right? Look for a company. Fortunately, Xerox, we have very, very strong values about diversity and inclusion. We treat people with dignity and respect. If people leave the company 3 years later, they'll want to come back, or if you talk to them 3 years later, they'll say, what we really miss is the people. And so I think, be resilient. Get around those speed bumps. You're going to have them. And if diversity and inclusion and some of the things that you value as an individual, I would make sure you line those up with whatever company you're going to join. And you'll be able to tell. You walk into a company, ride up the elevator. If you ride up the elevator and there's no diversity, there's probably no diversity in the company. When I ride up the elevator at Xerox, if there's 6 people in the elevator and 5 are white males with me, all 6 of us white males, it's weird. It's weird. You start looking around, you're going, oh my goodness, where's the representation from the women or the minorities? And so you'll be able to tell when you walk into a company. A company might ask you about your family, things like that. So I think there's a lot of different ways. I hope I answered your question. Good. Another one right up. Any in the back? Any questions in the back?
I really appreciate the topic you introduced, hard work and resiliency and practice. And in my experience, I've had to often draw on a lot of those qualities. My question is, if you could say something a little bit about how do you generate the energy that goes into that and keep it up? Keep that motivation. It requires a lot of energy. And it seems like you've done it for so many years. Keep going.
It's kind of where I say desire and execution kind of have to match. You have to find something, cliche, find something you enjoy and you never work a day in your life. You can say that. But how do you keep the energy? Make sure you have some short-term goals, and measure your small wins. Small wins do make you feel good. So I kind of look at, what do I want to accomplish today? And be very specific about those versus what I may want to accomplish for the year or maybe my next role or my next job. And then I think you just really gotta dig down deep and say, if I want to get this is the sweat equity I'm going to have to put into it. And it's hard. That's why not a lot of people, that's why there's one job in the corner office and not 50. And so how do you differentiate yourself? And by the way, it's not like you have to be in the corner office, but whatever you measure your success at, you're going to have to work hard for it. If you're going to want to be the best parent you can be, I work hard at being a good husband. We've been married 27 years. It's not like you just, boy, I talk about resilience, right? In today's environment, 50% of the, families have, divorced marriages. So it takes work, and you just got to say what's important to you and how you're going to make it happen. And that's hard. So I don't know if I gave you any great words of wisdom, but that's what I do. I get up and just, this is what I'm going to do today. I want to talked to 500 students, and hopefully I inspire you to go out and get a great job, and maybe there's one or two nuggets you took from this 45 minutes that helps you in your aspirations. And so if I can check that box off when I get home at 5 o'clock, then I'll feel good. It'll get me inspired to wake up tomorrow and do something different. I wish you the best of luck, though.
Thank you.
Is that okay?
Folks, how about another round of applause for